Good afternoon. Welcome to Door County Reads 2019. So glad you all braved the fog and other water-related hazards out there to come to this water-related Door County Reads. I'm Alan Kopishke, pardon me. I'm Alan Kopishke, and I'm your MC for this afternoon. If you haven't already, head over there and grab some treats. You're welcome to do so throughout the afternoon, at least while I'm up here. I won't be insulted if you're moving while I'm talking. Also, does everybody here have a raffle ticket? Who doesn't have a raffle ticket? Anybody? Okay, good. There'll be some fun things to give out later in the program. This is our 12th read, and this is a really neat exercise in community, in collaboration, in understanding something more about ourselves and about each other. And once again, the Friends of Door County Libraries has provided free books for the community to pick up. We thank the Friends of Door County Libraries for that, for all their support of this program. Just to give a little history, this program began as a collaboration between Peninsula Players Theater and Door County Library. I had joined Peninsula Players earlier in 2007 and got to know Becca, who was then the director of Door County Libraries, and we got together and applied to the NEA for this relatively new Big Read program that they were running, and it became a huge collaboration, dozens of organizations, dozens of events, thousands of people attending, and it's been really great. We got funders, we got partners, and we got audience, and it seemed to be something people wanted to continue. So we did this under the umbrella of the NEA and the Big Read program for 3 years, and then we decided we wanted a little more flexibility in how we did this, and spun it off, and it went entirely under the library's control and became Door County Reads. And it's become kind of an institution here, and I'm so glad to be a part of it. I just want to throw out some thanks to some of the early supporters who helped make this happen, and that was Becca Berger and the Friends of Door County Libraries, the NEA, the Peninsula Players Board of Directors, Door County Community Foundation, Raybrook Foundation, Door County Medical Center, and the MMG Foundation were all early supporters who really made this happen. And we've had classics by Steinbeck and Twain and Cather and McCullers, Bradbury, more recent books by William Kent Krieger, Laurie King, Richard Russo, Wendell Berry, Ayat Akhtar, Kyle Kalia, and now Dan Egan and Peter Guy. I have to say, this is an amazingly well-written book, a topic that's maybe not so easy for people to dive into, but so well-written, so easy to understand. I think it's tremendous. I just started on this one, so I can't talk quite so much about that, but I think it's great that we've got a fiction and a nonfiction this year. I think that's pretty exciting. I'm also proud of the fact that this community read incorporates the arts and a variety of arts disciplines to a greater extent than any other community that I am aware of, doing the Big Read, doing One Book, One City, or whatever program it is. Nobody incorporates the arts like Door County, and I think that's pretty thrilling. Play readings have always been a big part of it, and one of our first events tomorrow night is at Yorklandon. Peninsula Players will be doing a reading of a play they commissioned back in the 90s by Christine Thatcher called Apparitions. A wonderful play. I was honored to be part of the original cast at Peninsula Players back then. And it's about a variety of different people interacting with the water on the peninsula of Door County, and it's a wonderful play. I hope you're able to make it tomorrow night. Third Avenue Playhouse will be doing an Enemy of the People late next week. lots of wonderful things. I hope you all got the handout with all the events, and I know Tina's going to be going over all that in just a minute here. In fact, maybe now is the best time for me to introduce the Director of Door County Libraries, Tina Kukuski.
Thank you, Alan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here at the kickoff of Door County Reads 2019. This is a really special year for Door County Reads, as the Celebrate Water, Healthy Water initiative is the driving force behind our reading choices. And this is the first year that we're asking everyone in Door County to read 2 books. Our nonfiction choice, as Alan mentioned, is The Death and Life of the Great Lakes by Dan Egan. Mr. Egan is a reporter at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and a senior water policy fellow at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee School of Freshwater Sciences. He's twice been a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, and he has won the Alfred I. DuPont Columbia University Award, John B. Oakes Award, AAAS Kavli Science Journalism Award, and the J. Anthony Lucas Work in Progress Award. He's a graduate of the Columbia Journalism School. He lives in Milwaukee with his wife and children. Writer and editor Eva Holland says of this book, it is an engaging, vitally important work of science journalism. A blurb on the book jacket compares it to Silent Spring, the Rachel Carson classic that turned the tide against indiscriminate pesticide use and eventually helped create the United States Environmental Protection Act. Here's hoping, for the sake of the Great Lakes and everyone who depends on them, that Egan's book inspires similarly tangible results. Our fiction choice is Wintering by Peter Guy. Dr. Guy was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he continues to live. He received his BA from the University of Minnesota, his MFA from the University of New Orleans, and his PhD from Western Michigan University, where he taught creative writing and was the editor of Third Coast. Susan Schaefer of the Southwest Journal writes of Wintering. Set in the achingly majestic borderlands of northern Minnesota, Guy's writing is a paean to the complexity and ultimate triumph of the human spirit that is often as much at odds with itself as it is against the forces of nature. Delving deeply into the human psyche, this book mines universal themes in a unique tale of love, loss, and revenge, traversing decades and points of view, set in a landscape of ancient and menacing wilderness. That's quite a book. These engrossing books give us a reason to get together in the middle of winter and participate in the many events that are scheduled for Door County Reads 2019. Events, which, as Alan mentioned, bring together art, photography, music, writing, composition, film, history, theatrical plays, ecology, literature, and science. The events which will be happening throughout the county, so there's always an event near you, no matter where you are located. So as I did last year, here again is a look at Door County Reads 2019 by the numbers. There will be 24 events, 12 official book discussions at locations throughout Door County, and who knows how many unofficial book discussions are also going to be going on. There'll be 10 Door County artists of various media will open their galleries for 2 special mornings. There is going to be 4 writing workshops facilitated by Write On Door County, and there is advanced sign-up for these, so if you'd like to register, there's a kiosk right over by the tables there where you can sign up to participate in the workshops. There's going to be 4 special presentations: Research and Tales of a Ship Captain with Lynn Frederick, Plastics in the Great Lake with our keynote speaker, Ann Moser, Northwest Passage with Ian Carl, and What Makes the Great Lake So Great with Julia Nordic. There'll be 2 play readings. Alan already told us about that. I hope you can go to both. Wonderful theatrics. There'll be 2 special galleries, an underwater photographic gallery at the Ridges, and 8 sturgeon pop-up galleries found at each Door County Library branch. There'll be 2 author talks, and both authors will be here this year. We're really looking forward to that. And finally, there'll be one grand finale, which includes a film premiere of Wisconsin Water from the Air at Crossroads at Big Creek, and the music from that film will be, the composer will be at the Miller Art Museum to tell us all about what he does to compose for film and commercials. But this is all because of 2 authors and 2 books. More information about the events is available by picking up a printed copy of the 2-week schedule, which includes dates, times, and locations. And copies are provided here today and at all of the Door County Library branches. These copies are right over on the table where that trifold is set up. You can also go to doorcountyreads.org or the Door County Library Facebook page to get complete information and updates. Something else new this year is your feedback. We would love it if you would visit doorcountyreads.org and fill out an online evaluation or a paper evaluation at our branches for any of the events that you attend or participate in, because we value your opinion. In fact, in today's program, there's an insert that shows you the exact evaluations. So if you have time, there's pencils over at the table. Fill out the evaluation and let us know how we did today. We want to know your opinion. And finally, the Door County Reads Committee would not be able to put any of this together without help from participants, partners, collaborators, and sponsors. And I'm going to read you the list because they all deserve to be known. The Door County Library Foundation, the Friends of Door County Libraries, Celebrate Water, Healthy Water Initiative, the Door County Community Foundation, the Rotary Club of Sturgeon Bay, Hope Church, the Peninsula Players, Bjorklanden, the 3rd Avenue Playhouse, Birch Creek Music Performance Center, which is this fabulous place we're at today. This is wonderful. The Crossroads at Big Creek, Donald and Carol Press Pavilion, the Ridges Sanctuary, Sturgeon Bay High School, Jared Santek and Right on Door County, Midsummer's Music, the Griffin String Quartet, Ann Moser, Alan Kopicki, Ian Carl, Julia Nordic, Lynn Frederick, Katie Krause, Lynn Gilchrist, Deb Stroh Larson, Stephanie Trenchard, Jeremy Popelka, Jean Demers, Sandra Martinez, Wentz Martinez, Liz Butler, Karen Hurt-Sumnick, Vicki Rollins, the Peninsula Bookman, Novel Bay Books, the Howard House, the Holiday Music Motel, the White Gull Inn, Stone Harbor Resort, and, of course, the 8 branches of Door County Library and staff. So, we hope you will enjoy Door County Reads 2019 and be a part of a community making waves together. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. And a kickoff has always been a part of Door County Reads, and we have always been able to bring in great performers and arts and cultural speakers, and today is no exception. First off, we'll be hearing from Craig Konowalski, folk singer of both contemporary and historically significant material. Craig has performed in Door County over the past 4 decades. He began this run when he was cast in the very first show ever to play in Peninsula State Park's amphitheater in 1971, Song of the Inland Seas, which became the flagship of the popular American Heritage Ensemble lineup and the inspiration for the dozens of folk historical productions that follow. Song of the Inland Seas continues to demonstrate its timeless relevance by lending some of its musical treasures to this year's Door County Reads celebration. Mr. Konowalski will be performing 3 of these songs, which capture the spirit of life around the Great Lakes and hint at the lake's importance to all who live around them. Craig began his vocal music teaching career at Sturgeon Bay High School and went on to teach music for 10 years. He has performed both locally with his many musician friends and internationally for the USO. He continues his long association with live performances at Peninsula State Park through occasional guest appearances with Northern Sky Theater. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Konowalski.
I learned a few things about myself right there, too. I guess it means I've been around a while. I'm going to try to tie together some of these ideas, hopefully give a little demonstration of how music, art, literature, and maybe science in the form of ecology can be tied together and share some history together. The songs that I'm going to be doing today, I'll be doing two right now, that are from that show, Song of the Inland Seas. And I'll just kind of launch into it with some of the narration introductions that were used in these, for these songs way back when. And hopefully it'll kind of help to tie this in. If not, you can have your money back. Okay. Among the poet Carl Sandburg's works is an expansive collection of songs, stories, and poems contained in his book, The American Song Bag. A point of interest is that a close friend of Sandburg's, Helen Bookbinder, helped to notate and arrange some of the songs in this book. Helen was a socialite who split her time between Chicago and her summer home in Fish Creek. And that's a creek, right? And in fact, she lived very close to Peninsula Players. You probably have met her maybe somewhere back in the history. But, Helen was a huge supporter of the arts. And anyway, Carl Sandburg in the early 1900s was marine editor of the Milwaukee Journal newspaper. And it was during this time that this next song came to his attention. And he had this quote to say about this particular song. I heard this one from an old sea dog who was marine editor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer about the same time that I was marine editor of the Milwaukee Journal. It's a song of a Great Lakes boatman from the days when schooners or timber drovers hauled lumber and grain east and brought manufactured goods back out here to the west. It's lusty and gusty and such lines as, give her sheet and let her blow, the boys will pull her through. And it has spray and wind magic. And you ought to hear her howling when the wind was blowing free. My boys, if you will listen, I'll sing to you a song. So sit you down beside me, I won't detain you long. In Milwaukee last October, I chanced to land a berth on the timber hauling Bigler, sailing from Detroit. The wind came up that night, my boys, it blew both stiff and strong. As swift through Lake Michigan, the Bigler plowed along. And far below her foaming bow, the dashing waves she'd fling, with every stitch of canvas set and her horse's wagon wing. Oh, it's watch her, it's catch her, it's jump on the jukebox. Give her sheet and let her boil, the boys will blow her through. You ought to hear her howling when the wind was blowing free. On her passage down to Buffalo from Milwaukee. At Skidmore and Wobbleshanks, the entrance to the street, she might have passed the fleet ahead a day or two to wait, but we swept them all before us, and neither there you saw, clear out into Lake Huron, from the straits of Mackinac. Oh, it's watch her, it's catch her, it's jump on the jukebox. Give her a sheet and let her boil, the boys will pull her through. You ought to hear her howling when the wind was blowing free, on her passage down to Buffalo from Milwaukee. We made the O and passed on Point, the wind was fresh and free. As down the Canadian shore we sailed for Coburn on our lee. Oh, what was that a heaven was we knew as we drew near. There's a light upon the county, we are nigh to Buffalo Pier. Oh, it's watch her, it's catch her, it's jump on the jukebox. Give her a sheet and let her boil, the boys will pull her through. You ought to hear her howling when the wind was blowing free, on her passage down to Buffalo from Milwaukee. Well, thank you. So, the next song that I'm going to do is about Beaver Island and about a shipwreck that happened I don't know, back in the 1870s. And I'm going to start this out with a little quote from Herman Melville that can be found in Moby Dick. And it kind of shows that literature has always had a fascination with the Great Lakes and water in general. And I'll try to get this as close as I can. I may forget part of it, but I'll make up the rest. Those grand freshwater seas of ours, Erie, Ontario, Huron, Superior, and Michigan, possess an ocean-like expansiveness with many of the ocean's noblest traits. Here and there they are frowned upon by shore batteries and by the goat-like craggy guns of lofty Mackinac. They know what shipwrecks are, for however out of sight of land, however inland, they know full well the loss of ships and crews and their shrieking crews in the dead of the night. In Upper Lake Michigan, near the tip of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, lies Beaver Island, long the home port of several generations of Great Lakes sailors. And true to their heritage, they were wonderful singers and ballad makers. Their songs are about many subjects, but some of the most moving are about the tragedies on the lakes. It was in late October of '73. They left Beaver Harbor and had all come see. They were bound for Traverse City, their destination to go. Crossing over Lake Michigan, where the stormy winds blow. Oh, Johnny, dear son, in the dead of the night, I woke from a dream, and it gave me a fright. And to Traverse City, I beseech you, don't go, for you'll never cross Lake Michigan, where the stormy winds blow. Oh, mother, dear mother, your dreams are not true. I will return shortly and prove it to you. For the Lord will protect me wherever I go, and I'll cross over Lake Michigan, where the stormy winds blow. Their ship it was running before a strong gale. Her rudder unshipped and overboard went her sail, and the billows came foaming like mountains of snow. They were lost in Lake Michigan, where the stormy winds blow.
Thank you, Craig. That was terrific. And we'll be getting one more from Craig before we're done today.
And the next one's not so serious.
We are also very fortunate today to have with us Ann Moser, a Senior Special Librarian in the Wisconsin Water Library at UW-Madison and Education Coordinator for UW Sea Grant Institute. Since 2008, she's managed a small library focused on freshwater science with an emphasis on the Great Lakes and the water resources of Wisconsin. As Education Coordinator, she manages the hands-on experiences, training, and education resources that promote Great Lakes literacy for for formal and informal educators and their learners. Most of her own programming revolves around outreach and education to lifelong learners interested in aquatic and Great Lakes science from preschool age through retirement. She participates in events such as preschool story times at public libraries, a tall ship sail around Lake Michigan with formal educators, and presentations to the public on the Great Lakes issues. Anne has worked as a special librarian in Madison, Wisconsin and Seattle, Washington over the course of her nearly 30-year career in libraries and local government, environmental consulting, and higher education. Water has gotten a grip on her, and she is deeply grateful to work in this area of environmental science. She holds a BA in Spanish and Art History from Colby College in Waterville, Maine, and an MA in Library and Information Studies from UW-Madison. Ladies and gentlemen, Anne Moser.
Thank you guys. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I didn't realize how inspiring in music the Great Lakes are. That was really awesome. Thank you. I'm feeling really inspired right now. So I'm going to get started. All right. Yes. Okay. So what two fantastic choices that you guys are going to have over the next 2 weeks. I visited Door County last June of 2018, and I do travel the state quite a bit doing education and outreach. And I left that trip in Door County incredibly inspired and incredibly impressed to the communities and the residents' response to the watershed they live in. There's a lot of interest, a lot of excitement here in Door County about the Great Lakes. And the fact that you get to dive deep into Dan Egan's book, I think, is going to have an opportunity for you guys to have a lot of great conversations, a lot of interesting discussions, I think, that will continue even past the next 2 weeks. And you have amazing programming over the next couple of weeks. I'm just thrilled. I wish I could stay here in Madison, or in Door County for the whole thing. I was incredibly surprised and inspired when I read Winterings. As soon as I was invited to do this, I grabbed the book and read it. And it's a very interesting pairing for me personally. Obviously, it's about water. I'm a water librarian. It's awesome. But I think there's a couple other things for Door County especially that it really will perhaps ring true for you as well. So I think both books are so deeply about place. I have children, I'm in my 50s, and so I've been experiencing the information explosion in my life. I'm a librarian, so information is very important to my work. And I know that we have the globe. We wear watches and devices and the internet. You know, we can log in immediately and find out what the weather is in Geneva, where my daughter is. But I think the fact that we need to start to think about our own place and our connection to place might be an interesting thing to think about as you read these books. Because both books really do evoke this idea of place. And I think for Door County especially, that might ring true. The third thing I think that these two books have in common is their use of history. They take history and spin these two incredible stories. One's a fiction book, one's a nonfiction book, so for me that was something I don't really read a lot of. I'm a librarian, I read a lot, but I don't read a lot of history, historical fiction. But I thought the way that both these authors use history is really powerful. So water, place, history. So I wish you all a great couple of weeks in terms of the next couple of weeks of Door County Reads. I think you're in for a treat. I'm looking forward to hearing what the discussions evolve on. So what I'd like to do is, I'm a little nervous, can you tell? It always takes me a minute to settle in. So Tina invited me to talk and tell a little bit about myself and my life as a water librarian. There's not a lot of us out there. I'm in a professional association. There's about 125 worldwide, just so you know. And not a lot of freshwater librarians. That's the interesting little fact. I'm just going to set the stage a little bit about the Great Lakes. I know that Door County is very knowledgeable about their watershed, but just to kind of talk about what makes it great. And as you dive really deep into this issue, maybe we'll give you some things to think about as you read it. I would like to talk a little bit about the program I work for, Wisconsin Sea Grant, and I think I'll leave that for you to decide about. And then what I'd like to do is kind of have everyone sort of think about this idea of your own blue mind. I'm a science librarian, so fact-based, science-based. So I'm not talking about any warm and fuzzy thing, really. I am a little bit. But I think when we approach thinking about water, reading about water, I want you guys to think about what your own personal connection is to water. And it'll be a little clearer. It's a little fuzzy, it's a little muddy right now. So that's me and two of my three brothers. And so I, as many librarians are, very introverted, and so I've gotten over a little bit of that fear of speaking in public because I have to for my job. But I was like, what am I going to talk about myself? And I thought, well, maybe I should think about what my own personal connection to water is. I haven't made any choices in my life based on water. I've lived several places I'll narrate for you. But when I look at my own autobiography, water has been a big influence in my life. And now for 11 years I've been doing it as a professional. But I was born in Norwalk, Connecticut, a coastal community in Connecticut, swam a lot at Calf Pasture Beach, swam, loved it with my friends and family, lots of great memories. My grandfather was a New York City police officer, and oddly enough, he was in charge of the equestrian unit. And when my mother was in high school, they bought a cabin on Long Island. So this was back in the 40s when you could afford to buy a cabin on a cop's salary. And we spent many summers, and even to today, going out to the Atlantic Ocean. My brothers and I would have contests of who could stay in the water the longest. My mother would be yelling, careful of the riptide, the currents, etc. So lots of great memories related to this cold water of the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm still in the marine environment, in the salt water. I went to school in Maine, as was said, and I spent a summer on Kennebec River up in northern Maine as a whitewater raft guide. That was when I sort of faced my fear about water. I kind of embraced this part of me that was like really frightened, but had a really fun time of it. And then a couple summers, that star was not really well over Portland. I worked as a Port College student in coastal community, Portland, Maine, in tourism, really broke, had one of my greatest times of my life, really fun. You know, you're 21, you don't have a lot of responsibilities. So moved to Wisconsin, fell deep in love with the upper Midwest, really deep in love with the freshwater systems that are here, a little confused that the salt doesn't keep you buoyant anymore, and still not, even I left when I was 18, I still kind of get in the water, the fresh water here, and I'm a little surprised. But fell in love with it, fell in love with a Madisonian, as a matter of fact, fell in love with Door County. One of the first places that my husband and I went was to Newport State Park. We went camping this first summer that we were dating. And since then, since 1987, I come up here every year. I got smart though, I come in the winter. I love the ice, and I love what happens to the Great Lakes in the winter. During this time of my life, I also got my first chance to do the craziest thing I think ever, is to canoe camp in the Boundary Waters. Again, another sort of facing the challenge of being in this water body that's not real friendly, but absolutely love the Boundary Waters, and just another great connection to water. Forayed into the West Coast for 12 years when my husband went to school, went to the Pacific Ocean, camped there, lived on Puget Sound, but got smart and went back to the Midwest, and absolutely love living in the upper Midwest. And so obviously I can say that my life has been influenced by water, but not by any choice, but I always have seeked it out in my life. And so if anyone were to take a vote, I would say this is the best water system in the world. It's so awesome. I've lived really pretty amazing places with beautiful water, but I love Great Lakes. What makes it so great? So this is the Ann Moser version of what makes the Great Lakes so great. And I will make these comments connected both personally and what I've learned in 11 years as a water librarian. I think we can't ignore the scale of the Great Lakes. And obviously when the best view of it is through the satellite photographs, I think it's pretty clear. I'm really sorry, but I gotta do that. We've had quite a winter week in Wisconsin, but I love the contrast. I think that's another thing that's so wonderful about the Midwest is this change in seasons. But it does, and you'll read a little bit in Dan Ian's book about the history. So it goes back thousands of years. This ice sheet, covered most of Canada, down into the United States, around our area, all the way east to Newfoundland, and 20,000 years ago started to recede, and we were left 4,000 years ago with this amazing Laurentian Great Lakes. It's the Laurentide ice sheet. So really great history. It is a great watershed. We saw on that photograph how large it is. 16 degrees latitude, 7.5 degrees of longitude, 2 countries, 8 states, how many tribes? 19 tribes, 2 provinces, pretty amazing. 35,000 islands. There are more coastal miles around the Great Lakes than the Atlantic and the Pacific put together. My East Coast neighbor, my East Coast relatives hate when I say that. And it has this beautiful Sweetwater Seas, that beautiful name for it. They are considered a sea. I work for Sea Grant. Whenever I talk, kids are all like, what? But they do behave like seas. They affect weather. There are currents, including rip currents. And this great watershed has great ecology. Many species of mammals, from bears to coyotes to otters. When I was driving up here, I thought it was a good omen. I was passed by a bald eagle, great blue herons, everything. There's even a rattlesnake native to the Great Lakes, including this great species of fish, the iconic lake sturgeon, which you'll be able to see as you wander through all the different branches in Door County Library System. So just a really amazing set of species. But a great place does come with great risk, and because we live in this freshwater world, it freezes really fast, it's very dangerous, and we worry both in the winter and the summer about different risks that can happen. Just a little small anecdote. I have had the immense pleasure of being on the Dennis Sullivan. It's a replica tall ship out of Milwaukee. And you're on a tall ship, there's a lot of times you're just staring at the horizon. And you get to talking to these crew members that have been traveling around the world on these tall ships. They'll go for 3 months at a time. And honestly, every single person that I talked with, these sailors who've been around the world, have such reverence for the Great Lakes because of the weather, because of the currents, because they are very cognizant of the danger that might happen when they're sailing on the Great Lakes. So we, our organization, Wisconsin Sea Grant, works on issues related to that. Riptides caused too many deaths on the Great Lakes. In 2018, at least 117 people lost their lives. So that's something my program is working on as well. But it is really great for the economy. I'm sad that I'm sharing 2009 data with you. I'm working to find more current information, but at least 1.5 million jobs, $62 billion of economic benefit. And what is important about that is when we think about the health of our Great Lakes, you can't forget this economic piece. It means a lot of jobs and tourism and fisheries to a lot of the people that live here. And so that's something what Wisconsin Sea Grant focuses on. But I think it's these great people, including these nut people that like the Packers. But it is I love that picture, and I really stole it. I should not, because it's probably copyrighted. But I do think that what makes the Great Lakes so great are the people. I travel the state, and I love Great Lakes. I love the Upper Midwest, and it's partly due to the wonderful people that live here. 10% or so of the U.S. population is in close proximity to the watershed. It provides a lot of drinking water. 40 million U.S. and Canadian citizens get their drinking water from the Great Lakes. And I work a lot with kids, so I always put a plug in for those K through 12 students, 13 or 14 million of them. And at least about 1.5 million Wisconsin residents do draw their drinking water from the Great Lakes. So another part of the greatness that we need to be concerned with. So when you read Dan Egan's book, I think it's a great book. It gets a little intense because right now in whatever it is, February 3rd, 2019, the Great Lakes are under a lot of pressure. And he goes into a lot of detail about a lot of these issues. These challenges are all very interconnected. So when an invasive species comes in, it affects water quality, it affects the food web. So all of this is really interconnected. So the issues facing the Great Lakes are pretty big. Sometimes it is overwhelming. When I look at this list, I get a little like, ooh. However, so one of the things I want to just point out before I get going is, Dan does talk quite a bit about invasive species. So after I come speak, when you read the book, you're gonna meet this crazy sea lamprey. Now, Dan goes into really good detail describing the sea lamprey. You gotta come see it. And I encourage you to check out the teeth. And a lot of what he covers is covered by the muscles. So if you want to go kind of take a look at how a tiny little creature can cause such havoc, I encourage you to just kind of check it out. So I wanted to mention Wisconsin Sea Grant because it is overwhelming, but there are a lot of really great things going on around the Great Lakes, including the program that I work for, and lots of different organizations and government organizations working toward solving these challenges. So, have you guys heard of Sea Grant before? Some of you? So we have had a land grant system a long time in the United States. In the late 50s, early 60s, a gentleman in Minnesota said, we need the land grant for their water. We need a sea grant. And so Congress in about, I think 1966, passed the National Sea Grant College Program. And they basically modeled it on the land grant, where you take what happens at the university and you bring it out to the benefit of all of the citizens of the state. And I love this. It's a very complicated program to explain science serving America's coast. So we're taking solid science knowledge and trying to address those great challenges that we just talked about. It's a NOAA program. You all know NOAA from the Weather Service. They also have a big mission in the health of our coasts. And they give us money and the state matches it. And we do three things. We fund research, and our staff does education and outreach. I call it the Wisconsin Idea, which is a pretty well-known UW term for water. And there are Sea Grant programs all around all on our coast. There's 8 programs around the Great Lakes. So for research, we fund research. And what's so great about this model is it's based in Wisconsin. So it's the call for proposals is based here. So we have people that know where things are, what the problems are, and seek out proposals and make sure that we get research that addresses the local issues. So 60% of our budget is directed toward research. We do a call for proposal. As long as you're a principal investigator at any college, university in Wisconsin, you can be a St. Norbert or Beloit or Ripon or Northland College, UW system, you can apply to get funding. And we do a very rigorous peer review process, and we give out grants. And we do support, just like an NSF or an NIH, graduate students. And again, it's this local, it's not Washington, D.C. deciding what is important for the state of Wisconsin. But a lot of our staff do education and outreach. So we have a coastal engineer at UW Superior. Julia at UW Green Bay will be speaking here. She's a water quality specialist. She'll be here on the 13th. Fisheries at UW Manitowoc. We have a social scientist at UW-Milwaukee, because we're really looking at the people side of this as well, and the economic side. And in Madison, we have our administrative office, aquatic invasive species, mapping, and education, myself and another staff member. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about one project that Jean did that sort of illustrates how this model of extension works. And Jean just retired 2 days ago. We're going to miss him very much. He's a wonderful engineer. So he was approached by the ports of Superior and Duluth, and they were seeing problems with the steel infrastructure. So not something you would say would collapse easily. And there was all this pockmarks in it, and it was failing. And the ports were looking at this project and going, you know, what are we going to do? And they were going to fix it, but they didn't want it to keep happening. And so Jean, the coastal engineering specialist, came to just put a group together, including the port, the Corps of Engineers, paint manufacturers, port people. He brought them together, and they looked at the research, they looked at what was going on in other communities, and came up, they figured out some microbial action was happening, and they were able to come up with a solution, fix the paint manufacture, the formulation. And so that idea of bringing together the people that know how to solve the problems is kind of what we do as a program. So I think it's kind of a great example of how you bring together interested parties to solve problems. We do it in these 4 focus areas: resilient communities, sort of what I described that Jean did. We look at our fisheries, making a sustainable fisheries. We support the aquaculture industry, ecosystems, and then what I do, which is LWOOD, the environmental literacy piece. I work a lot with kids. I do programming, as my introduction said, with the 3 to 9-year-olds. I get the best audience. I just love these children. So I do what libraries do, is music, art, reading, and then we add in the science. So I take at a high level what Great Lakes research is going on and bring it to the children. So I sometimes wear silly hats. I do get to talk with adults once in a while. It's a huge pleasure for me. But I often leave that for the real specialists, because adults ask really hard questions. As a librarian, I'm a generalist, so I know a little bit about everything, basically. And then I do coordinate the education. So we do science workshops to teach teachers to teach Great Lakes literacy to their students. And again, this is another place when you read Dan Egan's book and it feels, just know that there are really awesome educators out there teaching students about all of these issues. So I learned about it as a 50-year-old adult, but children are learning about it. And I think that is really going to help to address some of these issues raised in Dan's book. And we have curricular, the library has curricular materials we loan to teachers and things like that. We have been like foraying and dabbling in art and science, and these two, I just encourage you, the sturgeon pictures are around the library system, and at the ridges we put up this underwater photography exhibit. I encourage you to kind of check it out, look at water through a different way, but I don't need to tell this, it sounds like there's a lot of arts and programming as part of this event. So just to remember what we talked about, all of these challenges, it is a little overwhelming, but I think it is helpful to know at least one program that is trying to find solutions and looking to address these challenges. The one thing that is not up here that actually Mr. Egan does refer to in his book that I see and I worry about, and I go out and work with kids a lot, and I have been in places that have been 5 and 10 miles away from Lake Michigan, and the children have never been there. You know, there's a lot of reasons why. There's economic reasons. Some kids don't know how to swim. So I do worry a little bit about people's lack of connection to the Great Lakes. Now in Door County, I think that that's not quite as much of an issue, but the Great Lakes is a large watershed where everyone needs to be committed and part of that solution. So I do worry a little bit about that, and I'm not gonna generally blame devices, because I'm as bad as the next one with my phone and looking up information. But I think it's worth noting and thinking about the sense of place. What is our connection to these waters? Wallace Nichols is a scientist. He's a researcher who's been coming up with this idea of our blue mind. There is a book called Our Blue Minds. It's really interesting. And they're actually looking at the science of what our connection to water is. Health outcomes are better, we're happier, there's some really good scientific research that shows that our connection to water is really beneficial to us as human beings. So on that note, I thought I would connect us to water with just a few images from the Great Lakes. I'm going to be quiet for a little bit. Let you enjoy it. I'm really sorry, but we're going to winter now. Thank you very much. So I hope that and these are pictures from my just 2 weeks ago up here in Door County with my friends. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your perspective on things, the visuals, the blue mind, and the sense of place. We are going to hear again from Craig Konowalski.
We are. Stand up and introduce yourself and just tell people where you heard this song once before.
I'm Laura John Caffin from, I grew up in Deep Pier. I'm a librarian in Sturgeon, Maine now. And this is my older sister, and we were in high school in 1970 when the Heritage Ensemble came to all of the schools and sang from UW-TV. And since that time, we have been in love with the song Indian Seeds. We know the words.
It's really fortunate that you do, because this is a sing-along. You didn't think you would get out of here without singing. Anyway, I'll do a little introduction here. One thing I wanted to say is that when I was a freshman in college back in 1970, a lot of the professors were telling us that the Great Lakes would be a dead sea within 20 years or 25 years. And so a lot of those programs that were initiated back in the early 70s have had some wonderful effects and have kind of given us the Great Lakes a reprieve. But it seems like every time, back in those days, it was pollution from the paper mills and runoff from the farms. I don't even think runoff from the farms was even recognized that much, or it certainly wasn't given much attention. But as we kind of get a grip on dealing with some of these things, it seems like new ones come up, the zebra mussels, milfoil. So there probably will be continuing challenges that may develop, even from some of the things we try to do as remedies for some of the others. We can't always foresee the side effects. But anyway, we have to be very happy and celebrate the wins that we've had, pushing back some of the problems with pollution. And so until, though, we can take our glasses, walk over to the Fox River, drink it safely, or maybe even more realistically, be able to go to all of our Door County beaches any day of the summer and find them open. We have some work to do. So you can start right now doing some of that work by helping me sing this song. And, this is a song to the tune of Matilda. It was written by David Peterson, the father of the Heritage Ensemble. And it's just kind of a silly song, so have some fun. Anyway, your part is very simple, and I'm counting on you ladies to anyway. It goes like this: water pollution, water pollution, water pollution. It wastes me money and it makes me throw up. Yeah, that's not one of your serious songs, is it? Anyway, I'd like you to just try it with me once, just so you get a little comfortable with it. I'm not going to pound it into the ground with you, but let's try it one time. Water pollution, it wastes me money and it makes me throw up. Okay, here we go. Water pollution, sing out the chorus. Water pollution, sing a little louder. Water pollution, it wastes me money and it makes me throw up. Okay, now I'd appreciate it if you didn't really throw up though at the end. But if you everybody can give a big yelp at the end of it, that's fine, because I probably will too. Okay, here's the song. Heavens above, as everyone knows, our H2O don't smell like no rose. We all agree there's plenty of slime, but no one knows who's guilty of the crime. For our water is far from a perfect solution, and we may have a problem called water pollution. Everybody, water pollution, sing out the chorus. Water pollution, sing a little louder. Water pollution, it wastes me money and it makes me throw up. Very good, very good. The purest of water is using our beer, but no one believes they got it from here. Our water may look the color of booze, but who would dare to drink that awful ooze? For our water is far from a perfect solution, and we may have a problem called water pollution. Everybody, water pollution, can't see the fish now. Water pollution, through the milfoil. Water pollution, wastes me money and it makes me throw up. Very good. Now where can the answer be found? Just seems like the arguments go round and round. We must find a way and act in haste, or we'll be up to our glasses in the waste. For water is far from a perfect solution, or at least can agree, though tentatively, that it's stream or lake, there's a chance you take. Keep your mouth shut tight, cause the chance is slight that our water's pure, and we think we're sure that our water is far from a perfect solution, and we may have a problem called water pollution.